Well, thank you very much. Happy to be here, honored. Um, let's see, I'm a board member of the Boston Global Forum, professor at MIT, Stanford, uh, formerly advisor to the UN Secretary General. And I want to talk about trusted AI, and I want to take a much more sort of concrete, practical sort of approach to this, which is something that I wrote about in my recent book, Shared Wisdom, which is being translated into Japanese, which I'm very happy about. And the path that I'm suggesting as the practical way forward is something that builds on declarations we've seen out of China, out of the US, out of Africa, the Union, and several other countries. And interestingly, it's different than what uh, was just you were hearing the sort of big issues. It's very concrete. In fact, in the United States, it's run by the Secretary of the Treasury. So it's basically asking that we need to very, very urgently regulate AI so that it's trusted for the day-to-day things that keep our society alive. That's trade, it's finance, it's health. These are the things that without these, large numbers of people will suffer greatly and probably die. So there is a great urgency in doing it. The thing about this is that it's a unique area for building trust. We agree that trade should continue. We agree that finance should continue and that resources shouldn't be stolen. They should be adequately purchased in a more or less open market. And so we can extend that broad agreement uh, to AI in a fairly natural way. We can use AI to augment existing systems, not to replace them. And in that way, we can keep them to be more or less trusted. We can tune them, and we can make them something that makes our world better, not worse. So it's a unique area to deal with these urgent day-to-day networks. We have broad political agreement around the world. We have broad conceptual agreement. And what you see is you see everywhere you look that people are working very hard to address these narrow problems of AI. How do you move money around? I'm on a committee that includes companies that manage $10 trillion of investment. They're very worried about AI, but not the big issues. They're worried about trust in the financial system. They're worried about fraud. They're worried about stability. And you see that also, I see that also in the G20 and G7 meetings. I see that in, for instance, what Singapore is doing, Abu Dhabi is doing, and what India is doing, and what I hope that Japan will be at the leader of also, which is extending current systems so that they can use AI and still be safe. These are not the grand, glorious things that we'd like AI to be safe about. It's not the vision of AI for democracy or government or things like that. It's merely to keep food in the mouths of babies, medicine where it's needed, and that we have the capital to be able to have the sort of innovation that we'd like. So, what I would urge you to do is to concentrate on these very practical, near term, and extremely urgent sorts of problems, because the solutions that are being developed there will be the ground on which we build trusted AI more generally. If we are busy making grounds, making infrastructure that gives identity so you know who you're dealing with, that makes sure that things get where they're supposed to go, to make sure that AI is preserving the human intent and not replacing the human intent. Those are the things that are urgently needed in finance, in trade, in medicine, and they're being built. The choices we make for these practical systems will be the thing that determines what we can do for the rest of AI, for other systems, for our social systems, for learning, for governance, and so forth. So I think that we need to have a sort of ordering of priorities here. We need to first solve the practical, somewhat boring uh, things like trade and finance and understand how to make them trusted, even though they have AI in them. And then we should think about how we can extend those solutions uh, to be able to deal with the more thorny problems, the problems of flourishing of society and so forth. So that's really my contribution here, is to say there is a path forward, a very practical path. And in fact, it's a very urgent path that has to do with extending the worldwide consensus we have around how trade occurs, how finance occurs, uh, to be able to leverage the power of AI in a way that's completely trusted. And the most amazing thing about this is that everybody agrees. This is not something that's contentious or people are running off in different directions. This is something where governments around the world have declared that this is a priority and that all the sorts of standards and engineering groups around the world are working hard to achieve. So we need to recognize that and leverage off of that for achieving things like trusted government, trusted flourishing learning of kids, and so forth. So that's my proposition to put in front of you. And I hope that you find it something that's interesting enough to really engage in and leverage off of. Thank you.